Variant, standard, title, Part 1, the beginning. She said you can handle me, ID, 45102. She said, you can handle me. The words weren't loud, just enough to make the air in the room pause. She smiled afterward, like she didn't mean it, but her eyes said otherwise. It wasn't a dare, it was a warning wrapped in charm. I'd met her only 3 weeks earlier, at a place I never thought I'd see someone like her. She was filling in for a colleague, running the evening meeting like she owned the room. Mid-40s, maybe, with that kind of calm that doesn't need to be announced. When she spoke, people listened, not because she was loud, but because she never wasted a word. I sat across from her, trying not to look like I was paying attention to every detail. The way she tapped her pen once before speaking, how her sleeves were rolled halfway up, her wrists bare and elegant. After the meeting, most people left. I stayed behind, pretending to check notes I didn't need. She lingered too, packing her papers slowly. The room grew quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies the smallest sounds. The click of her ring against the glass. My breath. Her perfume, subtle and grounded, something like sandalwood and memory. You're the new one, she said, not looking up. Yeah, I answered, trying not to mess it up. She smiled faintly. That's good. You will, though. Everyone does at first. I laughed, but it came out softer than I expected. She looked up then, really looked, and something in that glance unbalanced me. Not flirtation. Just attention, direct and unhurried. It was like being pulled closer without moving. That's how it started, not with a confession, not with a touch, but a long look across an empty room that lasted too long to be professional. Over the next days, it was small things. The way she'd pause by my desk and ask questions she already knew the answers to. The way her voice softened when no one else was around. Once, her hand brushed mine when she handed me a file, nothing more than a touch, but it left me strangely aware of every nerve in my arm. There was no plan. No chase. Just moments that built on silence and timing. She didn't talk much about herself, but sometimes her eyes did. I caught her staring out the window one evening, her face half lit by the dying sun. She looked far away. Like she was remembering something she didn't want to. Are you okay? I asked quietly. She blinked, then turned. You notice too much, she said. Maybe you don't say enough, I replied. Her lips parted, not in surprise, but as if she almost said something else. The silence stretched, thick and magnetic. That's when she leaned back, her tone suddenly lighter. You're young. You think you can read people. But some stories, you don't want to understand. Try me, I said before I could stop myself. That's when she said it, slow, deliberate, her voice almost a whisper. You can handle me. And for a second, I believed her. The space between us felt smaller than it was. My pulse betrayed me, I could hear it. She looked at me the way someone looks at a fire, aware of the warmth, cautious of the burn. Neither of us moved. Then, a sharp knock at the door. She exhaled, straightened her sleeves, and in a calm, unreadable tone said, You should get that. I turned toward the sound, but not before catching one last thing, her reflection in the glass, smiling faintly, as if the game had only just begun. The knock at the door broke whatever spell hung between us. After that night, things returned to normal, or pretended to. Meetings, quiet nods, polite talk about work. But the air never reset. Every time she entered a room, something inside me shifted, like gravity adjusting itself. I learned more about her in fragments. People spoke about her with a mix of admiration and distance. Divorced, they said. A son in college. Used to teach before she moved into administration. She's got walls, someone whispered once. I believed it, I'd seen them. But sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, there were cracks. We started working late together. She'd review my drafts, leaning over my shoulder to point out a line or correct a word. Her breath brushed my cheek when she spoke, her voice low, careful. I pretended to stay focused on the screen, but my mind was nowhere near the text. One evening, it was just us again. The rain had started, a soft patter against the tall windows. The office lights glowed too bright, so she turned one off, leaving the room dim, almost private. I could feel her behind me, closer than usual. "Do you always work this late?" I asked, not turning around. "Sometimes," she said. "It's easier when no one's here to interrupt my thoughts. Or to distract you?" She smiled. I didn't see it, but I heard it in her voice. "Something like that." She walked past me, brushing my arm, barely, but enough to feel it. I told myself it meant nothing, but the thought didn't hold. My pulse did the math my mind refused to. "You should go home," she said softly, gathering her things. "You too." "I don't really have anyone waiting," she said, almost under her breath, like she hadn't meant to say it aloud. That caught me. I turned, and for the first time, she didn't hide the tiredness in her eyes. Not sadness exactly, just that quiet, lived-in loneliness people stop talking about after a certain age. "Can I ask you something?" I said. She looked up. "You already do. Why do you keep your distance?" A pause. Her hands froze mid-motion, holding her bag strap. "Because it's easier that way." "For who?" "For both of us," she said. "You're younger." People would talk. They always do. Her voice was calm, but her fingers tightened around the strap. I wanted to say something, anything, but all that came out was, "Maybe I don't care what they think." Her gaze softened, almost painfully. "You should." The rain grew louder. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell that same sandalwood scent again. Her hand came up, hesitated, then rested on my shoulder, light and deliberate. "Don't make this harder," she whispered. But her hand didn't move. Neither did I. The touch wasn't bold or careless, it was a quiet surrender, a moment that said everything words couldn't. She pulled back first. "Good night," she murmured, turning toward the door. "Good night," I replied, though it felt like something far from over. When the door closed, the warmth from her touch stayed long after she left, lingering like a secret neither of us could afford to forget. Variant, standard title, Part 3, Heightening the Suspense. ID, 45104. After that night, things shifted again, not in what we said, but in what we didn't. Our conversations grew shorter, our pauses longer. She avoided my eyes sometimes, and when she didn't, it felt deliberate, like a challenge we both understood but refused to name. It was a Thursday evening when the boundary blurred again. We'd stayed late, just a few more edits, kind of night. The office felt suspended outside of time, emptied of everyone but us. The rain from earlier in the week had returned, tapping at the windows like a secret rhythm only we could hear. She stood behind me, leaning in to check a line on the screen. Her shoulder brushed mine, her hair fell forward, grazing my cheek. I froze, just slightly, but she didn't move away. Her voice was calm, low. "That comma doesn't belong there," she murmured. I turned to answer, and she was closer than she should have been. Her breath was warm against my skin. For a moment neither of us spoke. Her hand rested on the desk beside mine, fingers inches apart. I could see the faint tremor in them, the pulse at her wrist. I didn't reach out, I couldn't, but the air between us felt electric, thin. Then her phone buzzed. The sound cut through everything. She stepped back too quickly, as if burned. The light from her screen lit her face, unreadable for a second. Then she sighed, turned it over without checking. "Sorry," she said quietly. "It's fine," I managed, though my throat felt tight. She looked at me then, steady, searching. Whatever this is, it's not a good idea." I swallowed. "I know. But you're still here. So are you." The words hung there, heavier than the silence that followed. She exhaled, almost a laugh, but softer. "You don't make this easy. Neither do you." We both smiled, small, nervous things, before falling quiet again. The power flickered once, briefly. When the light steadied, she was looking at me differently, not with authority or restraint, but something more vulnerable. "I used to think I was done with this part of life," she said. "The wanting part. Maybe it never really ends," I said. Her gaze dropped to my lips for just a second. My heart caught up before my mind did. I took half a step closer, not enough to bridge the distance, but enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. She didn't move away. Her hand brushed my sleeve, the lightest touch, but deliberate. Then she froze, realization flickering through her eyes like a warning. The office door creaked open. A voice called from the hall, one of our coworkers, casual, unsuspecting. "Hey, you two still in there?" She pulled back instantly, her composure returning like armor. "Just wrapping up," she said, her tone even, practiced. The door shut again. Silence reclaimed the room. I turned toward her, heartbeat still racing. She met my eyes, steady, unreadable, then, just before walking past me, whispered, "Next time, you need to leave first." But she didn't walk straight to the door. She hesitated, 1, 2 seconds, and in that stillness, her hand brushed mine again. A silent confession. A promise neither of us dared to speak. Variant, standard, title, Part 4, nearing the climax. ID, 45105. The next few days were unbearable. Every interaction between us felt too normal to be real, too restrained to last. She spoke to me like before, measured, polite, but her eyes betrayed her. They lingered a second too long. Mine did too. Friday evening, she asked if I could stay after again. Her tone was casual, but there was something in it, that same quiet current pulling us both toward the edge. We worked in near silence. The only sounds were the soft scratching of pens, the hum of the heater, and the faint echo of music from someone's phone down the hall. She stood across the table, focused on a document, though I doubted she was really reading it. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally. She didn't look up. "You usually do. Why are you so afraid of this?" That made her pause. Slowly, she raised her eyes, and I saw it, that flicker of fear, of wanting, of something too big for words. "Because it's not supposed to happen," she said. "Not here. Not like this." I took a step closer. "And if it already is?" She didn't back away. Her hand was on the edge of the table, steady but tense. I could see the faint tremor in her fingers again. I wanted to reach for them, to still them, but she said quietly, "Don't." "I'm not doing anything," I whispered. "Exactly," she replied, her voice almost breaking. "That's what makes it worse." The room felt too small. I could feel the warmth of her presence even from where I stood. She finally let out a slow breath and said, "You're too young to know how quickly this can ruin someone." "Maybe," I said, "but I know what it feels like to want something real." That hit something inside her. She looked away, her lips parting slightly. I moved closer, just enough to reach out. My fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't stop me. Her eyes closed for a second, a surrender, maybe, and when she opened them, she looked at me like she had nothing left to hide. "Don't," she whispered again, but her voice didn't carry conviction this time. "You don't mean that," I said softly. She let out a small, helpless laugh, the kind that trembles at the edge of breaking. "You think you can handle this?" "You already asked me that," I said, stepping closer. "And you didn't answer." "I'm still here," I murmured. That silence, that heartbeat-long stillness, felt louder than anything either of us could have said. Her hand lifted, barely grazing my arm as she steadied herself. I could feel the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of my sleeve. The scent of her perfume was faint, familiar, intoxicating. She tilted her head slightly, eyes locked on mine. There was no space left between wanting and doing. And then, a noise outside the door. Voices. Laughter. She stepped back, her breath catching, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not here." I nodded, though my body ached from the distance. She turned to leave, hand on the doorknob, but before walking out, she glanced over her shoulder and said, "Next time, I won't stop you." The door clicked shut behind her, and the echo of her words lingered longer than her scent. Variant: Standard Title: Part 5: The Twist. ID: 45106. The following Monday felt different. She wasn't in her office when I arrived, and for the first time, I noticed how much her absence filled the space. I tried to work, but every passing minute gnawed at me. When she finally appeared near noon, she looked composed, too composed. "Morning," I said carefully. She nodded, offering a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Busy weekend?" "Not really," I said. "You?" "Quiet." Her tone made it clear that was all she'd give me. But later that day, I learned the truth. Someone had seen us, or at least thought they had. A rumor had started. I overheard 2 coworkers whispering near the copy room. "She's been spending a lot of late nights with him." "Well, she's single, but he's way younger, right?" My chest tightened. By the time I reached her office, she already knew. She was standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the parking lot. I shut the door quietly. "You heard?" "Yes," she said without turning around. "It didn't take long." "Does it matter?" I asked. She turned then, eyes sharp. "Of course it matters. You have a future here. I have a reputation. You think this is just gossip? It becomes truth faster than you think." I took a step closer. "Then tell me it isn't." Her jaw tightened. "I can't." For a moment, we both stood there, breathing too fast for the silence between us. She finally said, "You should stay away from me for a while." "That's not what you want," I said. Her expression faltered barely. "You don't know what I want." "Yes, I do," I whispered. I closed the distance between us. She didn't move. Her body tensed, but she didn't retreat. When I reached her, my hand brushed hers, light testing. She didn't pull away. "I can't keep pretending this doesn't matter," I said. Her eyes shimmered not from tears, but from the effort of holding everything in. "You think this is easy for me?" "I think you're scared," I said. "And you should be too." Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt her trembling, though she stood perfectly still. Then something broke, not between us, but inside the silence. She stepped closer, her hand rising almost involuntarily to touch my chest. Her palm stayed there, feeling the rhythm of my heart. "This," she began, then stopped, her voice caught somewhere between warning and surrender. I covered her hand with mine. "Then tell me to stop." She didn't. Seconds stretched like hours. The world outside faded, the hum of computers, the distant chatter, all gone. There was only her breath, shaky and uneven, brushing against my neck. Her eyes lifted to mine, full of conflict and something dangerously close to confession. And then, from the hall, a voice, firm, too familiar, called her name. She froze. We stepped apart, the air between us instantly colder. She looked at me, wide-eyed, then whispered, "He shouldn't be here." "Who?" I asked, but she was already moving toward the door, every trace of vulnerability replaced by calm control. Just before she opened it, she turned back and said quietly, "My ex-husband. He still works here." Then she walked out, leaving the truth hanging, heavy and irreversible, between us. Variant: Standard Title: Part 6: The Climax. ID: 45107. When she told me her ex-husband still worked there, something in the room shifted, like the air had turned heavier. For a moment, I thought she was joking. But the look on her face said otherwise. The man from the hall, the voice that called her name, was him. She didn't come back to her office for the rest of the day. Neither did I. The silence between us stretched into the night, taut and unfinished. The next evening, I found her outside, in the parking lot, sitting on the hood of her car. The sky was turning dark, that quiet blue that only happens before night really settles. She saw me approach, but didn't move. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I had to see you." She sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was small, but her hand trembled. "He knows," she said. "Or at least he suspects. He asked questions today. About us. What did you tell him?" "That there was nothing to tell." I stepped closer. "Was that a lie?" She looked at me, eyes bright in the fading light. "I don't even know anymore." The wind picked up, catching her hair, carrying that faint scent I'd come to memorize. I reached out, instinctively, and tucked a loose strand behind her ear. My fingers lingered longer than they should have. She didn't stop me. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "Because I can't not," I said. "Because pretending I don't want you feels worse than the risk." Her breath hitched. "You don't understand what this could cost me." "I do," I said. "But what if it's worth it?" Her eyes searched mine, the kind of look that felt like a test, like she wanted me to say something that would make sense of everything. But there was no logic left. Just the pulse between us, the gravity that kept pulling closer. She slid off the car, standing inches away. Her voice dropped low. "You're too close." "Then tell me to move." She didn't. The distance between us disappeared. Her hand found my chest, resting there, not pushing me away, just feeling the rise and fall of breath. I leaned in slightly, enough that I could feel the warmth of her body through the thin space between us. "You make me forget who I'm supposed to be," she whispered. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." For a second, it felt inevitable, the world narrowing down to the space between our mouths. Everything else, fear, gossip, the past, fell away. But she hesitated, eyes flicking to the office building behind me. "If I cross this line," she said, "there's no going back." I held her gaze. "Then maybe we don't." The words hung there, equal parts promise and mercy. Slowly she stepped back, her hands slipping from my chest, her breath still shaking. "Not tonight," she said. "But now you know." And as she turned away, I understood. It wasn't rejection. It was choice, raw, trembling, human, and for the first time, we finally saw each other clearly. The space between us vanished, and for a heartbeat, the world stopped. Her breath brushed against mine, soft and unsteady, carrying everything we'd both been afraid to say. Then, just before our lips met, she drew back, not far, but enough to look at me. "I can't keep hiding from this," she said. "But I don't want to lose myself in it either." Her honesty hit harder than any confession could. I nodded slowly, understanding without needing to force the moment forward. She exhaled, eyes glistening under the parking lot lights. "You make me feel alive again," she whispered. "And that terrifies me." "Maybe that's what we both needed," I said. "Something real. Even if it's complicated." For the first time, she smiled, small, genuine, and a little sad. Then she reached up and touched my face, her thumb tracing along my jaw like she was memorizing it. The tension between us softened, shifting into something quieter, deeper. She stepped in close again, not to kiss me, but to rest her forehead against mine. We stayed like that, eyes closed, sharing the same breath, either rushing the silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Whatever happens next, I don't want to regret this." "You won't," I said. "Neither will I." The wind moved gently around us, carrying the scent of rain and cold asphalt. For once, there was no pretending, no distance, no office walls. Just us, two people who'd stopped fighting what had already chosen them. She pulled back slightly, meeting my gaze. The fear that had lived in her eyes for weeks was gone. What remained was clarity, steady, calm, real. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we'll figure it out. Together." I nodded. "Together." And then she leaned in, slow and deliberate, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek, not rushed, not desperate. Just certain. It was the kind of touch that said everything words couldn't, We're here, and this is ours, no matter what comes next. When she turned to leave, I didn't stop her. She paused by her car door, looked back, and smiled again, a quiet promise that this wasn't the end. As the taillights faded into the night, I stood there under the hum of the streetlight, feeling both undone and whole at once. For the first time since this began, it didn't feel forbidden. It just felt right. And that was enough.